matchup. I'm headed down deep in the heart of Texas on Saturday to watch all things Cowboys. I've only seen one football game in the new stadium, and it was a Super Bowl. And, of course, they forgot some of the seats up on the roof that day, and the Steelers got beat, so it was a very, very happy entry and exit for me, and certainly happy for all the cheeseheads that were down in Arlington for that. This lady has covered the National Football League for about a quarter of a century deep in the heart of Texas. She's one of my favorites. She's a 23-season NFL voter as well as the Hall of Fame and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. You can follow her journey at NFL Shireen. And the best part is she's disassociated herself with Johnny Manziel as an Aggie down there. What a week you guys have had, right? At 8-1, you've covered the team a long time, waiting for things to turn around and have this sort of a season. And it all happens under a quarterback controversy that somehow didn't create fire. I remember when the Cowboys were controversy. What the hell's going on down there, Shireen?
Yeah, it is pretty amazing, and these seasons only come along once in a while, and the Ravens had one a few years ago that ended in a Super Bowl championship, and they are special and probably more special when you don't expect them, and I think for Cowboys fans, that's kind of how it is right now, is they didn't expect this, especially after their top two quarterbacks went down, as you said, first Kellen Moore and then Tony Romo, and to have a rookie come in and play like Dak Prescott has played, and, is a reminder of how Joe Flacco and Ben Roethlisberger and some of those guys played as rookies. It doesn't happen all that much with NFL quarterbacks, as we know, but he's been able to do it and put together a record-setting season.
For you and putting emotion aside on all of this, from the outside, it feels like they had to go with Prescott, but there must be some weirdness for you having been in that locker room the last decade, and for Jerry and Garrett and their affinity for Romo and him being the franchise guy. That was an incredible scene on Tuesday, right? I mean, it must have been surreal to be in the room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, he handed over the torch, so to speak, and gave it over to Dak Prescott, and he's their guy now, and they're going to ride with him not just now, but into the future, too. It's his job, and he'll have the job for ever, until he gets hurt or his career ends. So this is a long-term deal. It's not just, a couple-game deal or he's going to play bad and Romo's going to get his job back. So now you start looking at Romo's future and what might happen to him, and I know that's something that will be discussed in the offseason a lot about where he's going to end up, because he made it very clear in his press conference that he still wants to play and still feels like he can play at a high level. And I don't think that's ever been disputed. I think his problem obviously has been staying healthy, and he just can't do it. Played in 2 full games last season and half of 2 other games, and that's just not enough after missing the first 9 games of this season. He hadn't played a full NFL season since 2012. So it sort of reminds you of where Peyton Manning was in his career, and boy, Denver is probably licking its chops a little bit, thinking about they could have the second coming of that old quarterback who the team has let go to give one more try at a Super Bowl with a really good defense.
Everybody's looking for the next thing, right? I mean, we talked so much about Manziel last year, and I know you're Aggies, and Jerry got caught up in all that maelstrom as well and managed to stay away from it. What do they say? As Springsteen said, that ain't mud, that's quicksand, And in the case of them avoiding all of that, they find this kid in the 4th round who is the 8th quarterback taken in the draft. I don't know that when they took him, they believed Dak Prescott was going to be the next coming. Otherwise, he would have been taken a lot earlier, right?
Absolutely. There's no question about that. He, if they had thought he was good, they would have drafted him earlier, that good, or as good as he's turned out to be. The other thing is they tried to trade up to get 2 other quarterbacks. They tried to trade back up into the first round to get Paxton Lynch, and then when that didn't work, they tried to trade up and get Connor Cook. Now, this is a pretty special offense that Dak has walked into. Let's make no mistake about that. He's got the best offensive line in football playing in front of him. He's got an awfully talented running back playing behind him. And he's got some talented receivers and a talented tight end. So, who's to say that those other guys couldn't have come in there and done similar type things? But no one thought this kid would be as good as he's turned out to be, being a 4th-round pick, not even the Cowboys, and they can't pretend that they did.
Shireen Williams joining us here, longtime voice of all things Cowboys down there deep in the heart of Texas at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. You can follow her journey at NFL Shireen. That's Charean. And, I always enjoy having you on. I feel like I should have you on more than a couple of times a year and bug you a little more often the way I do McLean over in Houston, amongst many others. But every time we get together, we sort of evaluate Jerry, right? And from the outside, you know this. I'm not a Cowboy fan. I've disliked the Cowboys since Stahlback and Dorsett and all that stuff, being an Aller fan back in my day as well. But I dislike most of the teams in the league. But the Cowboys with the Jimmy thing happened almost at the beginning of my radio career 25 years ago. And Jerry has been this maligned figure and sort of power broker and, a guy, one of the rare guys that owns the team and calls the shots and has taken on all the pinata beatings that come along with not having won a Super Bowl since Jimmy left. Will he get credit for this? I mean, as much as you talk about the offensive line and the drafting and Elliott and Prescott and how the defense is played and the loyalty to Jason Garrett, all of that gets criticized in a 4-12 season. Maybe it's time to heap a little praise on old Jerry, who is a wonderful guy to be around and a guy that recruits even people that don't like the Cowboys like me.
Well, it certainly helps his Hall of Fame candidacy. He is one of the contributors candidates up for the Hall of Fame this year, and we'll vote on it the day before the Super Bowl. And I don't think this hurts him at all, because one of the negatives people had about him was that, hey, he hasn't gotten it done as a GM since Jimmy left. They won that third Super Bowl with Jimmy, and what is he with Jimmy's team? And hey, what has he done since then? Well, now you have, he's put together this great season, and you're right, for as much as you want to criticize, you go back and look at his draft since 2012, they're pretty darn good. 3 offensive linemen in the first round who arguably are the best at their positions, respectively, and Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Travis Frederick. And that's been a big key to this team, is that offensive line and those 3 guys. And then to get Dak Prescott in the 4th round, he was criticized a lot for drafting Zeke Elliott, in the first round, and he's turned out to be a great pick. And, a lot of people criticized him back when he passed on Johnny Manziel 2 years ago. That's turned out to be a godsend that they got Zach Martin instead of Johnny Manziel. So a lot of things have fallen for them, whether it be luck or whatever the case, but they have made some good picks in there too. He was criticized for overdrafting Travis Frederick, who's turned out to be the best center in football. So you're right. You criticize him for all of this stuff, but when it pays off, you've got to give him credit too. And I think that's where we are right now, and giving him credit for the way they've built this team. And he's starting to listen to his advisors more, which is a really big thing. Hasn't gone on his gut and his heart, which has steered him the wrong way sometimes. He's listened to advisors, and he's made some hard decisions. He wanted Johnny Manziel, make no mistake about that, but he listened and figured out that Zach Martin was the way that they needed to go. And, there's other things that have been, I'm sure in his heart, he wanted to give Tony Romo his job back and thinks Tony Romo can do as good a job as Dak Prescott's doing. And maybe he can, but he understands that you got to go with the hot hand, and you got to keep Dak Prescott in the lineup, despite his feelings for Tony Romo, and they are positive feelings for Tony Romo. Tony Romo was on his private plane flying up to Pittsburgh last week, and so he loves Tony Romo, but he knows that Dak Prescott's the way to go.
Shireen, every year we get together, we're out there freezing our tails off in Indianapolis and watching the Jim Short Olympics go on, and we talk about positions in the draft and who our teams are going to draft, and you cover the Cowboys, and they take a running back, and I guess collectively in the media and certainly in the scouting world, the running backs kind of get crapped on every year, right? It's like, we'll get one of those later in the draft. We're not going to use a first-round pick. They only last 4 to 6 years in the NFL, and yet the Cowboys step out and take a running back that, as you pointed out, there's criticism for all of this. But I tell you what, of all the things, being a Raven fan, that we fear on Sunday coming down there, is that kid gets loose for 160 yards and is a difference maker in some way, especially in the fourth quarter, if they can salt the game away and just run the football. Now, the Ravens have been stout against the run, but he has been a difference maker, and certainly with that offensive line, shades of where DeMarco Murray is, but probably better than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah. And, it's the second top-ranked rushing team that they've played. The Packers were number 1 against the run. I think they were allowing somewhere 56 yards per game rushing when they played the Cowboys, and he shredded them. So we'll see. I think the Ravens are a better defense. I think we all agree to that, and the Packers were. So this will be a stout test, but I think it's a really stout test for the Ravens to be able to try to stop him with that offensive line. A lot of people have asked, who's the MVP of this team? Is it Zeke? Is it Dak? Or could it possibly be that offensive line? And they all work together, and the sum of their parts is better than the parts themselves, which are pretty darn good. But what they've created together has been really special. And I think if you took one of those things away, whether it be that great offensive line, Dak or Zeke, together, it would not be as good as they are together. They've been really, really good together. But he is very scary as a running back, and he started off awfully slow those first two games. There were a lot of doubts about them taking this kid, but it turns out he is everything they expected him to be, and maybe they are better than they were 2 years ago. They were pretty darn good 2 years ago when DeMarco Murray won Offensive Player of the Year award and led the league in rushing. He was pretty darn good, and I think he could be good again running in this offense this season. And they did try to go trade for DeMarco Murray to get him back. And, of course, Philadelphia didn't want to trade within the division. But, again, another thing that kind of we start talking about those things that fell into place. Now, I think he could be really good in this offense anyway. But things that fell into place for them to get where they are, that was another one of them that Philadelphia wouldn't trade DeMarco Murray back to them. They ended up taking Ezekiel Elliott, and he's been terrific for them, over 1,000 yards already.
Shereen Williams has covered the National Football League for a quarter of a century and all things Cowboys deep in the heart of Texas for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. You can follow her journey out on Twitter at NFL Shereen. That's Charean. Also a Hall of Fame voter and a past president of the Pro Football Writers, but also someone that has seen everything with the Cowboys under the Jerry's world. And certainly for us, I guess 8.5 years ago, the paths intersected, right? When Jason Garrett was called up to Baltimore and his wife, and they were getting shown around, and Bisciotti offered him the job, and he didn't accept it, and then Harbaugh came along, and we won championships. It really is, the Cowboys thing is as close to a family shop as anyone, and you talk about Romo riding on the team plane. Jason Garrett has survived some things there that previous head coaches have not survived with Jerry, and there's been a sense of loyalty there that I would think that when you're winning like this, it creates even more of a bond, because Garrett has survived all of this stuff. He's a Cowboy through and through, that it would mean more for them to win with Jason Garrett.
Yeah, I think it would. I think he's been with the organization, I counted the other day, 17 years now as a player, assistant coach, and now head coach. And so they feel like he was homegrown, even though he started his coaching career elsewhere. They feel like they've homegrown this guy, and he is one of them, and he was the Troy Aikman's backup quarterback for many years. So Jerry absolutely loves Jason Garrett and is looking for ways to keep him, maybe unlike other coaches when he was looking for ways to fire them. You go back to Shane Gailey, who really didn't get a fair shot at this thing. But, yeah, I think that worked out for both teams when he turned down the Ravens and ended up staying here. And the Ravens obviously picked a great coach in John Harbaugh and were able to win a Super Bowl, and it's been terrific for them. And for a while, it looked like it wasn't going to work out for Garrett here, and, kind of sitting at that 500 record, a good year and then a bad year, and lots of 8-8 years in there. And now it finally seems like his program, as he likes to call it, is starting to pay off. And you hear the players in the locker room, they were asked this a lot in the locker room this week about, do they repeat Jason Garrett isms out in life, and they do, and you hear it. And Romo used a couple of them in his speech on Tuesday at his press conference, and you're just kind of laughing, saying that sounds just like Jason Garrett, and it does. So they've really picked up on what Garrett's selling them, and they've bought into it, and it's been a big key to this season. Of course, winning helps all that. They're not going to buy in. Last year was probably a little harder when they were 4-12, but this year when you're rolling along, it's a lot easier to buy into a program.
It's weird being on the outside, because this is a very likable version of the Cowboys, right? From all the bad boys and the guys getting arrested, and Nate Newton and Michael Irvin and all the nonsense that went on 25 years, and Jerry being unlikable, and Jimmy being arrogant, and how about him, Cowboy, and all that nonsense that went on. This is a pretty quiet version, right? I mean, they've toned it down and tamed it down, and part of that is the cast of characters, other than Ezekiel Elliott Elliott's abs. You know, I haven't seen, and Greg Hardy getting thrown out of there. It's been a pretty quiet, workman-like professional thing going on down there, right?
It's a terrific locker room, one of the best locker rooms I've been in 23 years, and it is all of that. I mean, what you see is what you get. They all get along, and I think part of it is it's a young locker room, so they hang together and they stay in the locker room after the day's over, and Jason Witten has fit right in with these guys and made himself a part of them, even though he's the old man of the group, and they look up to him, and he's been a great leader for this bunch. And so, yeah, I mean, it is a very likable team in every way, and I think getting rid of Greg Hardy was a big part of that. That helped a lot. After last year, that was not a good locker room last year, and you can argue whether chemistry begets winning or winning begets chemistry, and however chicken and egg philosophy you want to do, but it was not a good locker room last year, and it was a 4-12 season, and all of that was scrubbed, and Hardy left, and now this is a really good group of guys and a really close-knit team, and I think that makes a difference.
You know, the Witten-Romo thing's interesting, too, because of those relationships, and I've, said that I see it with Flacco and Pitta and, various guys that have those kind of bonds that feel like they go beyond football. The affection for Romo from a lot of people in the organization, even the media and the front office, as well as players and coaches, it must have been a tough thing for all of them to stomach that part of it, too, especially Witten, right?
Yeah, Witten wants to win. He wants a Super Bowl. He's getting down toward the end of his career. I mean, he knows the writing was on the wall for all of these guys. They understand. Dak Prescott's their quarterback. He's playing great. They're going to keep him in there. Witten understands as well as anybody. I'm sure he's had some conversations with Tony Romo that were very heartfelt. And Tony understands the situation, too, as he said in his press conference Tuesday. They all know what the decision was going to be, and they've known it for a long time, and they've seen it coming. So there was a lot of preparation, if you will. I think the press conference was really more for the fans and the media than it was for the players. The players watching, the players felt for Romo. They said in the locker room all week. But you know what? They understand. They didn't need to hear that. They understand why Dak Prescott's the starting quarterback. They love Dak Prescott. There is no sadness in that locker room for Tony Romo. He's going to go play his role just as any player losing his starting job would do. He's going to play his role. He's going to play it very well. And his role right now is to help Dak Prescott become a great NFL quarterback. And so he's going to do that. And he was in the opposite part of this scenario a few years ago when he got the job, many years ago now. Drew Bledsoe in that battle in 2006, and Bledsoe didn't always treat him real well. So I think you'll see him treat Dak Prescott maybe a little bit differently and help him along as he has this season. And that's his job now, and that's his total job is to help him and be ready in case something happens to Dak Prescott. But unless that happens, he's not going to see the field, and he understands that. And, yeah, there's a lot of sadness with the fans that he didn't get a chance to win a Super Bowl here because more than likely this is his last season and maybe he's played his last snap with the Dallas Cowboys. But he still might get a ring, and if he does get his ring, it will be partly because he has helped Dak Prescott and this team as the number 2 quarterback.
Is the highway between Dallas and Houston big enough to contain traffic that would be headed down? Was it 45? Is that the right road?
That's correct.
Yeah, 45 south down to Houston and Galveston if the Cowboys were to get to the Super Bowl in Houston?
Oh, boy, there's a lot of Cowboys fans down that way, too, in southeast Texas. So it'd be overrun with Cowboys fans, no doubt about that. And make no mistake, fans are already thinking about that, talking about that, planning for that. But you gotta pull it off. You've gotta. This is great what they're doing. 8-1's terrific. They're rolling. They could have the best record in the NFC, if not the NFL, by the end of the thing, and have home field advantage throughout. But the Texas Rangers taught them a very important lesson. That is meaningless unless you do it in January and February when it matters the most. And the Rangers let this town down by being swept out of the playoffs despite having home field advantage in that first round. And so they've got to get it done when it matters most. And they're not thinking that far ahead. But I know a lot of us have talked about it. And the disappointment it would be a great season, and you go, oh, yeah, kudos for that season. But unless you go get it done and get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, I think it's going to be a failed season, no matter if they finish 15-1 and go losing. You can ask the Patriots about going 16-0, and if they think that was a great season, I think to a man they would say, it wasn't because we didn't finish it off.
Last thing for you, we got a lot of folks in purple coming down deep in the heart of Texas this weekend, entering Jerry's World for the very first time. I've only seen one game there. It was a Super Bowl. I had a fun, VIP-ish experience that included a couple of beverages and saw all the mess down there. The thing that strikes me when I tell people about it is, and I don't know if you ever get used to this, the size of that television. Above the field. I'll never forget walking in there early that day. It was like 1 o'clock for the 6 o'clock kickoff or whatever it was. And the first image I had was my business partner, Brian Billick, like 12 stories high and 20 stories wide. It felt like Times Square. And there's this giant image of Brian Billick's head, over the field when I walked in there, and the place was empty and they were doing the pregame thing. It is a different kind of stadium, right? I mean, is there anything you would say to people that they need to see if they're seeing the stadium for the first time other than, my God, that's a large television?
Yeah, I would get there early and walk around. It is a fantastic place because there's artworks. You can Google and look at all the artworks they have. Sky Mirror is terrific outside the stadium and a must-see. Jerry spent millions and millions for that. A lot of artwork within the stadium, and it's just a fun place to walk around. And now they've got the tailgaters, unlike what they had at Texas Stadium. They have more tailgaters, and that's a really fun scene. But then inside of the building, there's a lot to see inside, but you're right. I mean, the screen is what separates him from any other stadium, and you'll catch yourself at least the first time you're there watching the screen instead of watching the action on the field, and it's easy to do, and you kind of get lost in that big screen. But that does separate it, I think, from other stadiums, is that big screen.
Love having you on, Shireen. We'll get together on Sunday, have a coffee or something before the game. We're coming down, man, 8-1. This is good football. We're in first place. You're in first. This is all you could hope for a couple of days before turkey and pumpkin pie, right?
Absolutely, it'll be a lot of fun. First division leader that the Cowboys have played this season, so it'll be a really big test for them to put their 8-1 record on the line, a team they have never beaten in history, 0-4 against the Ravens.
We're bringing the lunch pail, Shireen. We'll see you on Sunday.
Thanks.
You got it, Shireen Williams. She's covered the National Football League for a quarter of a century at the Fort Worth Star Telegram and them Cowboys. You can follow her at NFL Shireen. That's CHAREAN. We'll also link that out on our Twitter as well. You can email me anytime, nasty@WNST.net. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel as well. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault is there for you 24 hours a day from Fort Worth or Dallas or anywhere you are. Download the TuneIn Radio app. You can listen live from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. Last but never least, breaking news. There's been a little with the Orioles, more with the Ravens, roster moves, all that good stuff, arena football. We got all sorts of things happening around here. The breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday, every Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home and getting you ready for Thursday Night Football as well as a wild weekend of Ravens and Cowboys on Sunday. I'll be in Dallas. Luke's on the backfields in Owings Mills. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Dallas in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.